Dalliers. We are professional dilly-dalliers.
Yay, and this is the professional dilly-dally meeting of High Vibe Channeling on May 29th. And we have our special initial guest star, Chuck Crom, bringing forth to say two for us in a little bit after we give some stragglers time to hop on down.
Got to wrangle those stragglers, man.
Now, and that was one of the words that the hybrid children like to use.
Wranglers?
They said that they, like the older ones, they have to wrangle the younger children. They have certain words that they really, really prefer. And they said it's not as bad as herding cats. And then they laughed because they like those little colloquialisms that mean absolutely nothing to them.
Sure, yes.
But there are things like, yeah, our clothing they find hilarious.
Do they wear clothing?
I haven't gotten into it. They just happened to remark something about it. They were laughing, and then they said, "We find your clothing hilarious. It's absurd."
Well, if you're not totally physically focused, you probably don't have clothes involved.
Oh, yeah, I would imagine, and I'm sure they have some kind of coverings, for other various climates, but who knows? Because they may
Right.
have self-generating heat or cool sensors, or
Yeah, yeah.
who knows?
Well, around here, there's a bunch of communities where clothing's not required. Right, Miles?
Oh yeah,
There's quite a few
right
of
down
them,
the street from me. Yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a few. I mean, I got some good friends, some metaphysical friends as well that
Yeah,
are in the groups.
there you
Uh,
go.
I got an invitations to go. I said, nah, I still like my clothing.
We still want to keep this a hybrid children PG, so
Yeah, yeah.
just I thought, and they were moving stuff with sound,
Yeah.
and they were layering sound, and they were interested on the vibration of sound after it reflected or deflected off of something.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that is just so out of what I would ever think about.
Well,
So then,
Edgar Casey said that's the way the pyramids were built. And there's a lot of huge slabs of stone in these ancient sites, slabs pushing 200 tons. We couldn't even lift 100 tons with any piece of equipment or pieces of equipment we've got. We could not lift a stone 100 tons, and there's plenty of them in the 70 or 80 tons in the pyramids.
You were going to say, Chuck?
oh, well, now Miles has got me going as well. But I was going to say that when you were talking about what you were initially talking about with the way they use sound, what popped into my mind initially was one of Jane Roberts' books, where they had Mahat and Tweety and whatever, and and there was the guy and the woman, and they ran into this. What was it? Sumter, I think was the name of the individual that was in the society, and they were moving things with sound. Um, and so, yeah, that was kind of interesting. And then,
Was that in the Oversoul books?
I think so. I think it was. I think it was in the Oversoul books. Um, and then as you started to talk about the pyramids and stuff, I've watched a bunch of stuff like that, and there's some sort of an underground structure someplace where they have these huge rectangular slabs, immense, and they're inside of a building, and there's no way to get them in. And they're a different rock than what the building is made out of. So it's some very interesting stuff.
Yeah, I watched YouTube recently like that. These big underground areas that had huge pieces of stone in them, and there are many rooms
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
Cool. And welcome, Bruce.
Hey, Bruce.
Hi, Bruce.
Welcome, welcome. Yeah.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Chuck? And then we can move on forward and start the queue. If you have questions, you know what to do.
No, I'm so new to at least the three of you guys.
Yeah.
You may be our most seasoned veteran of high vibe channeling. I say that with pretty esteemed confidence that I am correct in
apart from the three of you.
posing.
Put me in the queue, Ray.
Okay. No, I think I've gotten 6, counting Pleiadians, and maybe 8 counting the or 7 counting the hybrid children.
What are you talking about?
Number of appearances.
Oh, I
You
see. I see.
Yeah,
definitely.
but Ray's not counting his continuous appearances on every session.
That is true.
He's
I have yet to miss
distinguishing
one.
he's distinguishing the phenomenon of channeling from one little state to another, and maybe ignoring
Yeah,
some that are happening all the time that are more subtle.
And
sure.
for the record, I even showed up to the sessions we did not have. So there we go to
There you
keep.
go.
There you go. There you go. You know.
That sounds like a Bruce Willis movie to me.
Yeah, yeah. Don't don't finish up with an afterthought that those were your most enjoyable sessions either.
When I'm all by myself. There's another song.
Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Isn't that get us into oneness? Is this a oneness session
There we
that we're
go. Could
going
be.
moving into?
Could be.
You got Bruce's ears perked up with that.
I know. I hear. Yeah. Miles surrounds himself with people that have the groove.
Yeah, it's true.
Uh,
Reba wanted to book me some time with a psychiatrist after I talked to Bruce this week.
And then you talk to Clay, and it got worse.
No,
And then you
I
talk
didn't
to
talk
me, and I pull you in a different direction. Oh my God! And Reba's looking, hey, what the hell's going on here?
yeah.
Ah, I love it. I love it. That's a good subject right there.
She says, "What the hell is an existential crisis anyway? Do you even know?"
well, you
That's right.
survived.
Anyway,
Indeed. All right, everybody mute, and we'll let Chuck do his thing.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
They're hovering anyway. Once again, we would greet all of you and express our appreciation, as we have with you previously, to be able to have this interaction with all of you. So, what we would like to do is to begin where we left off, shall we say, last time. And of course, our good friend Chris began that particular movement with speaking of the makers of meaning. And we added some ideas about what it is you make important in your life. And we thought we would continue a little bit and then expand on that just a little. Prior to that, as you sit in front of your monitor today and you pay attention to what we're doing here, you're interacting with the visuals on your monitor, you're interacting with what your ears are picking up, your attention is on these things. Then imagine, if you will, as you're looking at your monitor, there's a pair of hairy legs that begins to come over the edge from the back of your monitor. And the rest of it comes over onto the front of your monitor. Now your attention is someplace else. It's on the spider that's now on the top of your monitor. And you watch this spider as it crawls down your monitor, drops off your monitor, scurries across whatever your monitor sits on, and then drops onto the floor and makes its way across the floor and disappears. After that, your attention probably once again comes back to this screen and the interaction that we're having now. And then somebody knocks on your door, and your attention again shifts to the sound of somebody knocking on your door. You get up, you go and you answer your door. Have that conversation, you sit back down, and your attention is once again here. So this idea of your attention is an important concept. Your attention is you. The you of you is your attention. And as you have surrounded your attention with your physical experience, it is impinged by a number of things. So, as we talk about what it is that you make important, one of the ideas there is that whatever it is that is important for you in the moment is where you have placed your attention. And in doing that, you stimulate a mechanism that's called your perception. So you're all familiar to whatever degree with this concept, with the idea of your perception. You know that it's heavily influenced by your beliefs. It is also influenced by an idea that Ray brought up, we believe, in the early part of the last session, where he was talking about pools of consciousness. And we briefly added that there are a number of pools of consciousness that are associated with this particular physical dimension. And each of these have various flavors to them, shall we say. And these will play a part in your perception throughout what you would call your life. And there are other qualities as well that influence your perception in very strong ways. As you bring your awareness, bring your attention to those things that you make important in your life. So to lean a little into what Chris was talking about, those things are important to you because they have a meaning to you, a meaning that you have supplied to them. So we're weaving a multi-layered rug here. And there's one more ingredient that we want to put in the bowl as we mix our cake together. And that may be two ingredients. Those ingredients are agreement and acceptance. Slippery ingredients, a little like the whites of an egg. So, within your physical reality, historically speaking, individuals tended, we'll use that word in a moment, to express themselves frequently as groups. You would express yourself as a nation. You would express yourself as some sort of a democratic party. You would express yourself as some sort of a vocation, doctors, lawyers, electricians. you would see yourself as part of a group. This was quite prevalent for long periods of time in your history. Now, if you've been observant, what you will see is that you're beginning to focus more on the individuals in the groups and not the group itself. In that, all of these other ideas that prefaced what we just said become important. The meanings that you give to things, where it is you put your attention, agreement, and acceptance. As the collaboration, maybe we'll put it that way, between you, the focus personality you, and the rest of you, as you're creating your reality, you're aware that even though your earlier conversation may have suggested something entirely different, you're aware that you're the one that is creating all of the situations, circumstances, events that you experience. As collaboratively, you all begin to express yourself more and more uniquely. The idea of acceptance of individuals' expressions will become increasingly important, as well as acceptance of your own expressions. To keep in mind that you can perceive somebody's expression, and at times it may be quite close to within the group expression, perhaps we'll put it that way. It was actually expressed by the individual. When that energy comes into your energy field, we'll just put it like that for now, you may express it quite closely to how the other individual expressed it in their reality. You may express it quite differently. To most individuals, that process is largely beyond their ability to observe. They do not know how they're altering the expression of another individual. All they're aware of is what they're perceiving within their reality. And of course, that largely has to do with the fact that a large part of what you're doing now in this transition period is to become increasingly aware that you're the one that's manipulating your experience of reality. So in that, all of the various concepts that are associated with that idea that you've become familiar with through all the various sources that you have taken the opportunity to gather information from will begin to play out in your reality in an increasing way. It will less and less be about just knowing the information, and it will be increasingly about putting the information into practice. The challenges that you'll have in your experience of reality will give you an idea of where you are in that process, where you are within the process of shifting that information into knowingness, shall we say, to be able to utilize that information in your life. Now, again, this is not a better or worse scenario or a right or wrong scenario. It is only the idea of where you're all going with this experience of yours. So there may be more we will add a little later on, but we're going to pause right now because we feel that this is a good point to allow whatever types of comments you would have, whatever questions you might have, or if you would like to see something we've mentioned so far developed in any way, shape, or form.
So, what I'm interested in is for quite some time now, I've been hearing about ascension. Is that anything that you can talk about? Insights?
If you would, for us, define for yourself what this idea means to you.
Yeah. So, I'm just going to scattershot it here. I'm just going to make some statements. One, it's ascension is something that takes place inside of me. Two, I am the one that's responsible for ascension. Three, I hear a lot of talk about ETs and how they're supporting us in ascension, but isn't that just part of me? And the same thing with the energy from the sun and the solar flares and the X class and M class. I'm getting to the point where I'm really pretty confused.
Define
I think,
for us the word ascension, if you would, in all of that as well.
sure. For me, ascension is raising your vibration to the point where you're in steady contact with your inner spirit, with your soul, in a conscious way. In other words, yeah.
Now we understand you. So, yes, much of what you spoke about, we would agree with in the context of, let us use a metaphor. If you can imagine, let's say, a swimming pool, and it is 50 meters long, 20 meters wide, maybe 8 feet deep, and it's filled with pure water, clear. Then you begin to take large tanks of coloring, maybe 100 gallons a piece. Green, and you dump it all in. Red, you dump it all in. Blue, you dump it all in. Yellow, you dump it all in. Orange, you dump it all in. Many, many colors. And there's some sort of a agitation system within this pool, and it mixes all of this within the water. So we're going to suggest to you that the colors are you as, there's various names. You could say soul, you could say essence, you could say entity, you could say oversoul, whatever you would like to say, the you of you. The pool itself originally, and we're making just a distinction for the sake of the explanation. The pool itself is all of consciousness. You as the entity, essence, whatever you would like to say, now within our example, are mixed throughout all of consciousness. You have, as a result of your physically seeming experience, an idea of being sequestered, an idea of having boundaries, an idea of having something begins here and ends there, and something else begins here and ends over here, something else begins here and ends over here. Maybe we could talk about your oceans and all the various currents that run through your oceans. They are the ocean, yet they are themselves various movements within the ocean, but they are not separate from the ocean. So, as movements like the one that you are experiencing now come into your experience within the experience, you attempt to explain them, of course, and you explain them as a race, shall we say, utilizing what you have, the experience of your experience of physical reality. And so, of course, none of that, again, is wrong. It will give you ideas and concepts, help you to move in a particular direction as this movement progresses. So, yes, in fact, because you are much vaster than you have any idea of right now, and because the you of you holds infinite number of dimensions, all of these seemingly separate expressions of consciousness, in whatever term you would like to give them, are aspects of you. If we use an individual that you're quite familiar with, the Sasani individual and the focused personality that you call Daryl, you're aware that they are both expressions of the same entity. They have expressed that much to you. You may or may not have an expression in that dimension. More than likely you do, if you are aware of these individuals in your reality. But it is contained within you. Because you walk around in the shape that you do and the familiarity that you have with it, you utilize those types of ideas as you speak to yourself as other aspects of consciousness. Perhaps we could call them the other colors within the pool, reach out to you in helpfulness. They will utilize the ideas that they know will be effective for them to utilize to help catch your attention without overwhelming you, without scaring you, without causing any kind of untoward effects, because of course you will do that for yourself. Even the idea of raising your vibration gives you a concept that there's, and perhaps not you, or maybe even the group that we speak with tonight, but some may see it as a lower vibration is not as good as a higher vibration. When, of course, it makes no difference whatsoever, because what you're talking about in the context of that idea of vibration are different experiences. And consciousness is unending experience. None of those experiences is better or worse than another experience. It's all experience. It's what consciousness does. It experiences itself infinitely, unendingly. So, for it to be simple for you, just keep in mind that you're becoming increasingly aware of who and what you are. As all of you do that, you will use many metaphors, many symbols. You'll have many ideas. There'll be many ways that all of you around yourselves will reach into, shall we say, your experience, utilizing all the information that they know lies within you, because, of course, all of what is there for you within your consciousness, they are aware of. They will use whatever is at their disposal to utilize that they think will be effective to help you move within this process that you're in right now. Sometimes you pay too much attention to the methodologies, meaning that you could be a little more concerned with the methodologies sometimes than what they're about, which is to stimulate your movement, your expansive, if we can use that word, awareness of who and what you are. That's what it's all about for anyone who's helping you, is that. It's not so much about the tools that they use, it's about the goal, which is about you being increasingly aware of what you actually are. So I'm going to pause there and ask you if we've answered all of what you would like us to answer, or if you would like us to hit on a couple of other places.
Well, that was remarkable. It's like you saw inside my soul. Well, you probably do. So, for instance, about the different vibrational levels, intellectually, I know they're the same, but in practicality in my life, my wife and I are always talking about and trying to achieve a higher vibrational level, thinking that that's going to put us in closer alignment with our oversoul, our soul, our inner spirit. But I can tell from what you said that that's not true. I can just be still at any level of vibration and be connecting just fine with my inner spirit. Is that true?
And indeed, any individual on your planet at any moment can pause in what they're doing and shift their attention, perhaps we'll say, and become aware of certain expressions of themselves. The concept of the individual that you go Pashar is probably the individual that is the most practiced in using that word. But what many individuals forget is that there have been several times when that individual has said that when we use that term, it means much, much more than what you perceive it to mean. And they cannot describe in the moment what it is they mean because you have no reference for it yet. Much of what individuals share with you will make much more sense to you once you're familiar with wider portions of who and what you are. And it will only be then that some of the things that they say and what they meant by those things will start to become apparent for you.
Now, will that happen automatically, irrespective of what I do?
It will not.
Say that again, please. It will not.
It will not. It will depend on, in line with what it is that we're talking about, what it is that's important to you. Because again, recall that And we'll use a time period, let's say your 1950s. As a focused personality in the 1950s, you were just as surrounded by all of consciousness as you are right now. You are no more surrounded by all of consciousness right now than you were then. You were no less all of consciousness then than you are right now. The only thing that's changed is where you choose to put your focus, where you choose to put your attention, what it is that's important to you, how it is you're utilizing your beliefs. What you have done as a group in the last number of decades is to, maybe we'll say, add to your belief language. If you think about your 1950s, if somebody would have come up to you, let's say you lived then as a 30-year-old man, and they would have said, so, what part of your karma do you think you're living out right now? You would have no idea what it was they were talking about. It took an introduction of different beliefs to your country anyway, that began a little after that. Now, you could walk up into somebody and say, I'm channeling my grandmother. And they have some idea about what it is that you mean. Because those terms and those ideas are now a part of your civilization and language in this country. But in your 1950s, they were not. So you're bringing information into your physical experience at a pace that will not overwhelm you, but how do we phrase this? Those of you who are very much on the bandwagon, shall we say, are also up for a little more excitement than other individuals are, which can mean sometimes a more challenging ride, shall we say. Those on your planet who aren't quite so interested in that, they will leave your planet, or they will find themselves in what you might call, from this perspective, a probable Earth. Those of you who are up for the excitement will hang around. You will get to practice with the ideas that you've become familiar with over the last 5 or 6 decades or so. And of course, they've become increasingly expansive. You will get the opportunity to fold them into your lives and see the results of doing that. To you, it will seem like a process. It's not actually a process, but it will seem like that from your perspective, which is, of course, a part of your experience here, to have a process. So there's nothing wrong
But
with the process. Go ahead.
actually, it's just a change in focus. Is that correct?
Indeed. You're only
Okay.
perceiving now the reality from a different perspective. And of course, because you're doing that, it's a different reality.
Wow. Well, this has been wonderful, Chuck. Thank you. Really remarkable from my perspective. So, and I really enjoyed the way you started out, because it seemed to me that that's exactly what I was dealing with in my life, a confluence of all these different perspectives mixing together. And now I'm trying to sort my way through them to make decisions about how to live.
We would make a suggestion to you again, as a result of the conversation that you were having earlier. If you can, make this another one of your practices. When you have those events that come into your life that seem to throw a monkey wrench into your day, attempt not to consider it that way. Just accept the event and fold it into your day. Don't think about what you would rather be doing. Don't think about where you would rather be. Don't think about how this is taking up all your time. If you can, if it struggles a little bit, that's okay. But if you can just allow it now to be what your day is about, you will begin to see changes happen to you in a little easier way, in a smoother way. You will begin to push your borders out a little bit more and a little more easily.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. I did literally challenge myself to do that, and I did do it. But after an hour or so, I started slipping back into the quicksand. But
That's okay. The thing is that as you do that, just notice that you're doing it and say,
yeah,
okay, I'm doing it. Do I want to continue on that direction, or would I like to again involve myself in the practice? Doesn't make any difference. Observing the movements that are happening in you are key to all the things that you are doing right now. They're key to your movement, shall we say, to be able to observe yourself in that way. So don't judge what it is you're observing, otherwise, you will be reticent to observe. Just allow yourself to observe what's there. And if you would like to do something differently, then go ahead and do something differently.
well, thank you very much. I've certainly enjoyed this.
DeSato, I have a couple of comments and then a question. On the subject of high vibration, I view all consciousness of the Earth collective as high vibrational. It's just that humans have the ability to dull their shine by believing things which are not part of their true reality, whereas most animals don't have to worry about that because they don't have the worry concept that as we think about.
It's interesting. We understand the perspective, but again, realize that you're within this dimension to have all the various experiences that you have within the dimension, even the ones where you may consider that your shine is being dulled. From the experience of the more encompassing you, that's not what's going on. Those expressions are as bright, shall we say, within your terminology, as any other expression is.
Correct.
You see the differences here, which is fine. It's part of the process. It's part of your experience here. But the you of you does not make those delineations.
Thank you. And the one other thought that came to me during your initial message on the acceptance part was that I have found not being judgmental is really a key and a big help towards just accepting because we find it harder to accept things which trigger us because we haven't done the work necessary to release that so we can view it objectively and neutrally.
One of the things to attempt to remember in this is that in this shifting period, you are not going to sacrifice your preferences on the way that you would like to make your choices. You will retain those. There will be a right and a wrong for you. There will be a good or a bad for you. There will be a better or a worse for you. However, your better or worse will not apply to somebody else. Their better or worse will apply to them. And you may have two very different ways of choosing to express within a particular idea or concept. Acceptance is about accepting that your preferences are yours and how you want to express, and theirs are theirs and how they want to express. And because consciousness expresses itself uniquely in its own way, and if in fact you are creating the reality that you're experiencing, regardless of what the other individual is expressing within their reality, The only way to have it show up in yours is if you choose to insert it. You and you collaboratively, of course.
Yes. And now my question has to do with planetary consciousness. Are, is there a specific density or grouping or anything which chooses to be a planetary consciousness? Or is that just another form and it can take any of a myriad of layers or energies just to form it? I'm just curious to see if there's any groupings there.
So you are aware that there are an infinite number of probable Earths. Yes. So as, and we'll speak in a more singular way at this moment, as the more encompassing you expresses an aspect of itself as this you, that more encompassing you also expresses an aspect of itself as the planet.
Okay.
But of course, there's not one planet. There are incountable numbers of your planet.
Correct. And if there was like a planet Maldek, which apparently has been destroyed in other timelines, then that consciousness just finds other avenues of expression to play in,
Indeed.
but it's still happening simultaneously. So,
Imagine, think of, we don't believe this will upset you too much, so we can mention it in this way. When you choose to end your existence here, and let's say you choose cremation, to the rest of physical reality, your physical form largely disappears, yet you continue. It is the same with a planet that, shall we say, disintegrates in an impact of some type.
perfect.
The consciousness that was the planet, of course, remains, as you will.
Thank you. I really appreciate your perspectives and insight and message. Luis?
Thank you. This set. So it seems like awareness is very central to our expansion. And acceptance is very central to our ability to create, expand the realm of that which we experience through our creations. So not only are we makers of the interpretations, we choose how to interpret. We have to kind of purify that somewhat through that other thing called acceptance. And deep inside of us, we may have undercurrents of what that's all about. But as we do that, we're becoming more capable to become better aware, not just of what we're observing and what is causing and how we interact with it all, but we're becoming more aware of where else we can be. Any commentary to that? He said.
Yes, that of course is the process that you are all within, is becoming increasingly aware of the other things you're doing, the other yous that you are. If you can recall your awareness of your life when you were 5, 6, 7, it was fairly circumscribed at that time as far as your physical awareness is concerned. And we might even go a little later and say 10 in that regard. Although at this point, and when we say this point, at this age, the idea of your age right now, you probably don't recall the interaction you had with that larger aspect of you when you were young still. You'll probably recall more of the outer things. But just as your awareness of your world around you has expanded in that regard from what it was when you, let's say you were 10 years of age, that will be your process again. You will have much more awareness of how things work. You will have much more awareness of all the things that are going on within your experience. Right now, you call it your world. You are much more aware of all the things going on around your world than a 10-year-old would be. That more encompassing you is like that. It is more familiar. It is more aware of all the things that it is doing. So, yes, and because, especially from this point forward, increasingly so, those things will be unfamiliar to you. The idea of acceptance and allowance will be important because you're going to incorporate movements of yourself, awarenesses of yourself into your experience that are dissimilar from what you are familiar with on your planet right now, from what you believe to be possible, from the experiences you have had. They will be dissimilar. So the ability to accept, the more in any moment, beginning right now, the more you can accept difference in any way, shape, or form, the more you'll become familiar with doing that in more areas. And as those differences begin to show up in your life, we'll just say it this way, the easier they will be to embrace.
So there's a surrendering.
A trust in yourself. Again, from your perspective now, if you could look into the life of you at 10, 11, 12, 13 and guide yourself, you would guide yourself in a very loving way. It's you. Why would you steer yourself wrong? This is what we would ask you to trust about your future as it unfolds for you. If you pay attention, and we know all of you are in an increasing way, if you pay attention to the information that's coming from you, that you loves you and wants to guide you in the way that's the most fulfilling for you. Why would it not? It's you.
All you.
Anyone else have another question? And hello, Patrick. Bruce? Nope. To say to, I think we've run the gamut, so to speak. And
It was a gamut well run.
thank you so much for your energy and insights and quality answers. It's always a pleasure on this end, and we know it is on your end as well. So thanks for this co-creation.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to interact with all of you always.
Thank you. We appreciate you always.
That was profound and quite expanding. Thank you. And to say too. Yeah.
And we really don't need to say welcome back, Chuck, because to say to really never leaves, and Chuck really never leaves. So, I mean, you know.
Sometimes it's like I get asked to sit in the back seat a little bit though.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of that going on tonight.
Yeah, they were
A lot of times I'm in the passenger seat, but tonight I was a little bit more in the back seat.
better than the trunk.
I would venture to say that the Setu has just a little tad more patience than Chuck.
That would in those terms make sense.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video. We'll take a couple of minute break if we need to, and then we'll wait for Mr. Tom to show up and
Cool.
thrill us. And thank you all for another successful and wonderful and informative high vibe channeling session.